This is Not Sam Wrestling.
Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
So I thought today we should talk about the history of the King of the Ring, what it's been in WWE, and why we're all so attached to it. You know, there was a lot of excitement when this King of the Ring announcement was made because people have been waiting for the King of the Ring to return. Everybody has different viewpoints of how the King of the Ring or how their ideal version of King of the Ring is competed. For me, I think the best way to do it is the way they originally started doing it on pay-per-view. And that is an 8-person, single elimination, one-night tournament. I think that the idea of one superstar going on a journey across 3 credible opponents, all in the same night, to finally overcome and succeed and call himself King of the Ring is exactly what this tournament should all be about. I feel like when it's done over the course of several weeks, while it can still be cool and it can still tell a story over the course of weeks, it's not quite the same as the journey that one has to take in one night. The King of the Ring tournament was started as a one-night tournament. I think most WWE fans that are around the same age as me probably think of the King of the Ring as the tournament that was introduced in 1993 on WWE pay-per-view. And it's interesting because King of the Ring became the 5th WWE pay-per-view. There was the big 4, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. And then in 1993, a 5th pay-per-view, a June tradition, was added to the WWE roster, and that was King of the Ring. And I don't know why, but it feels like everything that happened before, 91 cannot be messed with. This is cemented into WWE legacy and tradition. But if it happened after 91, we may end up getting rid of it. I mean, I guess you could argue that Survivor Series changed completely from, teams of 5 strive to survive to the one night of the year when Raw and SmackDown compete in head-to-head competition. But the Survivor Series still exists. We've never gone a year without a Survivor Series. And not only have we gone multiple years, I mean, it's been since 2002 that the last King of the Ring pure pay-per-view was fought, but we've also gone many years since 93 without actually having an active king in the WWE. So the King of the Ring was not actually started in 1993. No, the King of the Ring was started in 1985. It actually took place on live events. So the first 2 King of the Rings, 1985 and 1986, were in Foxborough, Massachusetts. 1987 until 1991 was in Providence, Rhode Island. There was no King of the Ring tournament in 1990. There was no King of the Ring tournament in 1992. 1993, they brought it to pay-per-view. And I know what you're thinking. Well, we knew that there was a King of the Ring tournament that happened before the pay-per-view because there were kings in the WWE. And while, yes, that's true, only one of those televised kings was actually crowned via a King of the Ring tournament. So in 1985, the first King of the Ring tournament in Foxborough, Massachusetts, was won by Don Morocco. And from 85 until 91, skipping 1990, for all except one, these tournaments were actually 16-man tournaments that took place in one night in an arena. One year it was a 12-man tournament, but they were all over 8 men. Now, the reason why I wouldn't go with a 16-man tournament in one night is because inevitably you end up with a lot of short matches. We saw a 16-man tournament most recently, to my knowledge, on pay-per-view at Survivor Series Deadly Games in, 1998. So, and that tournament was full of short matches and schmazzes and, littered in, there were a few okay matches. But 8 matches, you're able to pull off some really good stuff. But so 1985, Don Morocco wins. It's 1986 that the winner of the tournament actually brings the crown onto TV. So in 1986, Harley Race won the King of the Ring tournament. The next year, in 1987, Macho Man Randy Savage won the King of the Ring tournament, and I know what you're thinking. Oh, that's how we got Macho King. That is not how we got Macho King. So the televised crown, to my understanding, was won by Harley Race at this live event in 1986, last eliminating Pedro Morales in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Harley Race was then introduced on television as King Harley Race, and it lended him the credibility to become a villain that could compete with Hulk Hogan. See, Harley Race had come in as a decorated champion, of course, as an icon of NWA wrestling, and various territories, but WWE didn't acknowledge any territories or organizations that existed outside of their bubble. So they couldn't bring in, it's like when they brought in Ric Flair and they just called him the real world champion, because it's like, we want you to bring your credibility with you, but we don't want to give any credibility to the organization where you came from. So they brought Harley Race in, and they made him the king by winning this tournament, and then he could call himself the king and challenge Hulk Hogan and instantly be this person who's a main eventer, even though his history in the WWE was nil. And this is something that we'll see throughout the history of the King of the Ring tournament, the idea that winning the tournament immediately puts you in a main event position, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. But what would happen with the crown that Harley Race won is that Harley would end up holding that crown until he got legitimately injured, had to step aside, and he would then give the crown. He would crown Haku as the new king of the WWE. And Haku would wrestle as King Haku until Haku lost that crown to Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Again, this is not tournament action. This is just the crown getting switched. Haku lost to Hacksaw Jim Duggan. He became King Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who eventually would lose to the Macho Man Randy Savage, who would become the Macho King Randy Savage, and that's where we would get the Macho King who reigned from, WrestleMania still like 1990, 1991. That's where you get Macho King from. But Macho Man had actually won the King of the Ring tournament in 1987. He was just not televised as WWE's King of the Ring. So then in 1988, Ted DiBiase wins the King of the Ring tournament. Again, this is now, we've moved on to Providence, Rhode Island, same place where Randy Savage won it. And Ted DiBiase is the 1988 King of the Ring winner. And then in 1989, Tito Santana wins the King of the Ring crown. As I said, there would be no live event King of the Ring tournament in 1990. And in 1991, Bret the Hitman Hart would win the King of the Ring tournament, last defeating Erwin R. Shyster. So in 1991, Bret Hart would win the King of the Ring tournament on a non-televised live event. In 1992, Bret Hart would win the WWE Championship at a non-televised live event. And in 1993, Bret Hart would go on to pay-per-view and win the first ever televised pay-per-view King of the Ring tournament. When the King of the Ring tournament was announced as a pay-per-view, that was the hype. Basically, what was going on this pay-per-view was the first, they called it the first, King of the Ring tournament, and Yokozuna versus Hulk Hogan in the rematch. Now, for the sake of this conversation, we are not talking about King of the Ring pay-per-views. We're strictly talking about tournaments, so we probably won't talk a lot about the other stuff that happened at these pay-per-views. 1993, after losing the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 9 to Yokozuna, Bret Hart goes into the King of the Ring. We had 16 men in the tournament. And when I say in the tournament, I mean we had a round of 16 men that were in qualifying matches leading up to the pay-per-view, although it was probably 15 because Bret Hart had a bye going in. But we had a first round that competed on television that led to an 8-man single elimination one-night tournament. This, to me, is the best one-night King of the Ring tournament on pay-per-view. It is the first, but it is the best, and that is primarily because, it's 3 great Bret the Hitman Hart matches in a single night. He goes through Razor Ramon, Mr. Perfect, and Bam Bam Bigelow to be crowned King of the Ring as a good guy, which, as you'll see on the list, there's not a ton of hero King of the Rings, but this one worked. I think that the purpose of this was to remind people that Bret Hart was still to be taken seriously. You could argue that a King of the Ring tournament for most would not be enough to do it. I do not think that the reason at the end of this tournament that people continued to take Bret Hart seriously was because simply he was crowned king. I think that it was because Bret Hart went out and had 3 classic matches over the course of one pay-per-view. And I think ultimately this is the prototypical King of the Ring tournament. Ultimately, this is what the King of the Ring tournament should be about 100% of the time. Either having a villain that spoils there's 3 types of King of the Rings, and we'll see it actually in the first 3 King of the Rings. One is the good guy who simply by grit, determination, and hard work has 3 matches, all of which have to be very good, and somehow finds a way to win every single time. 3 matches against 3 very good opponents that leaves you with this knowledge of, wow, this guy is on a different level. That can be done with the King of the Ring crown. The other is the villain who comes in and spoils it, who's not necessarily the greatest villain ever, usually a monster or something like that, but a villain that just comes in and spoils everything, and he's unbeatable, and the King of the Ring tournament is used to announce that he is a threat to the rest of the roster. And the third great prototypical King of the Ring is the villain who is actually a great wrestler. The villain who would be a mid-card villain, but has gone out here to put the world on notice that not only is he great, but he knows it. Now, later on, the King of the Ring tournament would be used for something else, and that's for a villain to think that he's actually a king. But we'll get to that. So that first tournament is Bret Hart showing the world that there is nobody who's on his level by having 3 classic matches against 3 credible opponents in one night and winning and being crowned king. And Bret Hart did not call himself King Bret Hart after that. He did not come to the ring with a scepter. It was simply another notch on his belt. It was another award. This is a former WWE champion, former Intercontinental champion, former tag team champion, and a King of the Ring tournament winner. Which I think, unless you're really playing it up villainously and you only do that sparingly, using it as a credit, I think, is inevitably the best use of the King of the Ring title. In 1994, we followed the same formula. A round of qualifying matches in which 8 winners showed up to the pay-per-view to compete in an 8-man single elimination tournament. In 94, we saw Owen Hart taking the crown, along with it taking on the moniker of the King of Hearts, Owen Hart. In one night, Owen beat Tatanka, the 1-2-3 Kid, and Razor Ramon. The Razor Ramon match is very good. He wins it with the help of Jim the Anvil Neidhart, so it's not like, it's still a villainous thing. And the 1-2-3 Kid match is great. The second round match between Owen and the 1-2-3 Kid is really, really good. But what this did was it showed you that we're coming off of WrestleMania 10, where Owen beat Bret Hart in the opening match, but Bret Hart won the WWE Championship. So at the King of the Ring, where Bret Hart is actually in the WWE Championship match against then Intercontinental Champion Diesel, who, by the way, from 93 to 94, that's 4 classic King of the Ring pay-per-view matches that Bret Hart had all in a row, because the Diesel match is great. Owen now sits there with the crown, now calling himself the King of Hearts, and the world is put on notice that the victory against Bret Hart at WrestleMania 10 was no fluke. That Owen Hart was here to stay, and you are looking at a now main event caliber villain. I think the King of the Ring tournament did probably as much to define Owen Hart as anybody. I think Owen did more with that King of the Ring crown than just about anybody, and did so successfully. Coming into 95 is where we don't have necessarily the classic matches. 95, we have the Monster, who wins it in a way that is not the most exciting in the world, but comes out of it in a position where it's like, okay, now we're going to have to watch out for this guy. Now, there is this thing that there's an assumed, at least in this era, there was this assumed stipulation, and sometimes they would outwardly say it and sometimes not, that the winner of the King of the Ring tournament would receive a shot at the WWE Championship. Bret Hart, winning the King of the Ring tournament in 1993, did not get a WWE title opportunity. Instead, he got a rivalry with Jerry the King Lawler, and then had to win the Royal Rumble in 1994 along with Lex Luger in order to get that title opportunity. However, Owen Hart in 94 did win the tournament and go on to SummerSlam to face his brother Bret for the WWE Championship. And the same thing happened in 95. Mabel would become King Mabel, and he would win the King of the Ring tournament and go on to SummerSlam to face Diesel in an absolute classic, I say with my tongue firmly planted inside of my cheek. So this tournament on paper, I mean, it's 1995 to a T. You know, they went again, 8 men on the pay-per-view, 16 to start with qualifying matches on TV. But on TV, I mean, Mantar was in a qualifying match, Duke the Dumpster Droese, Jacob Blue, Eli Blue wasn't in it, Jacob Blue was, of the Blue Brothers, Adam Bomb was in one. But Mabel, wait till you hear the names that were in this tournament. Mabel, in the first round, defeats The Undertaker. The Undertaker is in the first round of this King of the Ring tournament. He goes down to Mabel. The second round, Mabel is to face the winner of Shawn Michaels and the Supreme Fighting Machine, Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. So theoretically, in 1995, had things gone differently, we could have had a second round King of the Ring tournament match between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. And instead, Mabel beat The Undertaker. Shawn Michaels and the Supreme Fighting Machine, went to a 15-minute time limit draw. So Mabel got a bye. And then Mabel ended up defeating Savio Vega in the finals. So where Bret Hart became King of the Ring by defeating Mr. Perfect, Razor Ramon, and Bam Bam Bigelow in one night on pay-per-view. And Owen Hart became the King of the Ring by beating Tatanka, the 1-2-3 Kid, and Razor Ramon all in one night on pay-per-view. And so much drama in that match because Razor was now a good guy. He had lost the year before to Bret Hart in the first round. And it was like, okay, Razor, now that he's a hero, is going to get that crown. He's going to make up for last year, and Owen was still able to beat him. All that drama and all that potential great wrestling was taken away from us by having Mabel defeat The Undertaker, get a bye, and then beat Savio Vega in the finals. Luckily, that would not go on to become the prototypical. But, I mean, the idea that you called him King Mabel, and that's what I mean, like, that's where these King of the Ring tournaments can be dangerous. If you just use King of the Ring tournaments to elevate somebody, we can end up with more Mabels. And I'll get into that as we review where this could go this year and what it means. But you don't want more. God bless him. I love Big Daddy V, Viscera. I have no problems with Mabel. But the idea of him being the King of the Ring, SummerSlam main event, let's pump the brakes. A year later in 1996, we go back to the Owen Hart school of thought. Again, still doing the 8-man single elimination one-night tournament. On TV, the 16 men that had matches that were qualifiers for the King of the Ring tournament that didn't make it. You're talking about Goldust, Ultimate Warrior, Yokozuna. Vader is in the first round of this tournament. But the winner of this tournament, Savio Vega, is back. He lost in the finals of 1995. In 1996, he thinks this might be his year, but he goes down to a man named Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold goes to the second round. He defeats the much-hyped rookie that had come in that year at WrestleMania 12, Marvelous Mark Merrow, although Marvelous catches him with a good boot to the lip earlier in the match, and Austin has to leave to get stitches and then come back for the third round. And in the third and final round, he is facing off against a returning Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, this is a beautiful story where Jake the Snake Roberts, a legend who's been gone from the WWE for 4 years, is finally back and has finally got his life on track, has finally found Jesus, and is going to be an inspiration to all of us until Stone Cold Steve Austin ruins it all. And Stone Cold Steve Austin, much like Owen Hart, a superstar that on paper maybe was not destined for the main event, has come to the King of the Ring tournament and has whooped ass and left without people being able to deny him. Oh, and it didn't hurt that at the end of those 3 matches, he drops the Austin 316 promo. And that is why this is so important. The Austin 316 promo doesn't have nearly the same effect if Steve Austin just beat one guy. Even if he just beat 2 guys, it doesn't have nearly the same effect. The fact that Steve Austin took out Savio Vega, Mark Merrow, and Jake the Snake Roberts all in the same night is one of the things that makes that so special. That's why I believe in the 8-man tournament one nighter so much. 1997 is when the Attitude Era starts to slip in. That is the year that we move down from 8 to 4 men. All we do is the semifinals and the finals on pay-per-view. We have 8 men on TV that go through qualifying matches, not 16. And on pay-per-view, Triple H, who the rumor was supposed to win in 96, but was punished after Farewell to the Click, beats Ahmed Johnson and Mankind. Now, he and Mankind do have about a 20-minute match in that final. But he defeats Mankind, and Triple H becomes the King of the Ring. Now, Mabel and Owen Hart would both walk around. Owen didn't really wear the crown much, but he called himself the King of Hearts. Mabel walked around with the crown and called himself King Mabel. Stone Cold Steve Austin used the King of the Ring just like Bret Hart did in the best way possible, where it was just a credit. Triple H, it's a hilarious story. What I've heard is that Triple H got that crown, and it was the big poofy velvety crown. It looks ridiculous. And they apparently made a bunch of them, because every time Triple H got his hands on that crown, he would find a way to destroy it. He would find a way to hit his opponent with it or do something with it over the course of a match where the crown would be totally destroyed so he wouldn't have to wear it, because he thought it was so stupid. Because Triple H also wanted to do the Bret Hart and Steve Austin route and just hold the title. Just have it be another credit that he's accomplished. Be one of those guys that maybe it wasn't written in stone that he would come in and be a main event villain, but be undeniable because of his performance at the King of the Ring. Triple H had a lot working against him. He did not have the 3 rounds all in one night, and he was made to wear that stupid crown. But God bless the brain on that guy. He tried to destroy it every chance that he got. That's why there's multiples. 1998, we have a 16-man tournament, but both of the first rounds are on TV. And on pay-per-view, we, again, only have a 4-man tournament. Ken Shamrock, it's an opportunity to try to put this man on a pedestal. He ends up beating Jeff Jarrett and The Rock in one night. Big, especially The Rock, big victory even at the time in 1998. But generally speaking, by then, the King of the Ring tournament itself was being outshined by everything else that was on the pay-per-view. Of course, King of the Ring 98, we see Undertaker versus Mankind in that Hell in a Cell match. And the big storyline of the night was Stone Cold Steve Austin and Kane, First Blood. Kane winning the WWE Championship. Now, this is another thing that takes away from the King of the Ring crown. If you're going to win the King of the Ring crown, it has to be like, for most of these that we've read so far, it was the real story coming out of the night. Of course, you know, Hulk Hogan losing the title, of course, was a big story coming out of 93. And there were other moments before 98. But for the most part, maybe not in 97, but the King being crowned was the highlight of the pay-per-view. In 99, we're back to an 8-man tournament on pay-per-view, and we're back to, I think, using the tournament to try to make somebody, but I don't think it was done effectively. So Billy Gunn wins the King of the Ring tournament in 1999, and this is when they're trying to make Billy Gunn into a single star. which I don't think ever really happened in WWE on the level that they wanted it to. I think that the reason that the King of the Ring tournament didn't work for him, they had 16 compete in it again, qualifying round on television. But Billy Gunn went through Ken Shamrock, Kane, and X-Pac, which is a big deal. I mean, that's a murderer's row there to go through. But the fact is that Billy Gunn beat Ken Shamrock due to a referee stoppage. So he didn't really beat the sitting king. Ken Shamrock had won the year before, and Billy Gunn did not pin him. The referee stoppage, Ken Shamrock got disqualified. Kane in the second round is a big victory. But if you're going to have Kane and X-Pac, don't beat Kane in the second round and then have your finals with X-Pac. I get it. I think that the idea at the time was the drama of 2 DX members in the finals. But realistically, if you want to make Billy Gunn winning the King of the Ring tournament a big deal, you have Kane tear through his matches. You remind everybody that a year earlier, Kane had won the WWE Championship from Stone Cold Steve Austin at that very pay-per-view. And then you have Billy Gunn beat Kane to go like, oh my God, the wars that Billy Gunn has gone through. But he would also have to legitimately beat Ken Shamrock, I think, in order for that to be effective. We get to 2000, and in 2000, get this, we have 8 men on pay-per-view competing the way I like it. Television, 32 men. 32 men started. So there were 2 rounds of King of the Ring qualifiers on TV. Almost everybody on the roster was involved in some way, shape, or form in this King of the Ring tournament. But once we get to the pay-per-view, it's 8 men. Kurt Angle wins. This is 2000. 2000 is Kurt Angle's time. And this is good. I mean, you know, I think that by now, because, you know, it wasn't so special when Triple H won and the Ken Shamrock and Billy Gunn King of the Ring crown wins kind of went completely under the radar. Kurt Angle winning the King of the Ring was not nearly as impressive as his other accolades, but it made sense because it legitimized his other accolades. Like it legitimized him being a gold medal winner and everything like that. But he beat Chris Jericho, Crash Holly, and Rikishi all in one night. I guess the idea was that he beat Rikishi in the finals because, I don't know, maybe Rikishi was the new hot superstar. And, you know, Rikishi's so big it would be hard to beat him. But I would have loved to have seen Jericho and Kurt Angle instead of in the first round of pay-per-view in the finals of that tournament. Also, all of those matches were under 10 minutes. You know, I don't think every match needs to be over 10 minutes, but I think some of them do. Especially if you're Kurt Angle and you really want to show what you can do. In 2001, we've got 16 men in the tournament. But again, you've only got 2. You only got to beat 2 men because you've got a 4-man tournament going into the pay-per-view. Edge wins the King of the Ring crown. He beats Rhino and Kurt Angle. Problem is, and this was supposed to be a big moment for Edge as a rookie, you know, winning this King of the Ring crown, especially since he beat Kurt Angle, the previous year's king, in the finals. But Edge won the tournament after interference. So Kurt Angle had him in the ankle lock. And Edge tapped out, but the referee was distracted. Then Shane O'Mac interferes. Edge ends up winning the King of the Ring tournament through interference, even though he's a good guy. Celebrating, it's the 5th match on an 8-match show. So it's not even close to the main event. 4th or 5th match. And then after Kurt Angle has lost to Edge in the King of the Ring tournament, he's back and he beats Shane McMahon in that classic street fight. And quite frankly, the Kurt Angle-Shane McMahon match is the match that you remember from that show. So think all things considered, the fact that Kurt Angle came out of that pay-per-view as a much bigger star than Edge, you know, I'm sure the idea was that, well, Kurt Angle, we won't lose anything on him because we'll have him beat Shane McMahon, but we'll still have Edge be the King of the Ring. It'll give him the rub. You can't do it. This is just, I feel like 2001 is a case of having your cake and eating it too. If you want to go with Edge, you got to go with Edge. If you're not ready to go with Edge, give Kurt Angle the crown 2 years in a row. But, you know, don't lollygag this thing. See, in 2002, there was no question as to whose tournament this was. I think it would have been even better if they had done 8 men, as always, but no, there were only 4 men. It was 2 rounds of tournament action on pay-per-view in 2002. In 2002, it was the first time the brands were split, so you had Raw and SmackDown in each match. You know, first round on pay-per-view was Raw and SmackDown, Raw versus SmackDown, and then another Raw versus SmackDown, and then the winner of those 2 matches would go to the finals. The winner of those 2 matches, of course, Brock Lesnar and Rob Van Dam. Brock Lesnar beats Test, and then he goes to the finals against Rob Van Dam, a credible, celebrated person, and he defeats Rob Van Dam. That was, of course, the tournament that during the qualifiers, Stone Cold Steve Austin walked out on WWE because he didn't want to lose to Brock Lesnar on just a simple TV match. Stone Cold was supposed to go on to have a match with Eddie Guerrero on that pay-per-view, but I think, if I remember right, Stone Cold was replaced with Ric Flair. And it was Ric Flair versus Eddie Guerrero on that pay-per-view, but it wasn't a tournament match. So, yeah, Brock Lesnar. And I think that it was used effectively for that one. I would say it was ineffective for Edge, Billy Gunn, Ken Shamrock. It was meh for Triple H. It was meh for Kurt Angle. And I think we're getting back with Brock Lesnar to what it was supposed to be for. I think it would have been stronger if he had beaten 3 men in one night instead of 2 men in one night, but it is what it is. Now, that's all null and void because after 2002, we're not doing King of the Ring on pay-per-view anymore. It's that 2002 is the end of the King of the Ring as a pay-per-view. And 2006 is where it changes. So Brock would obviously not run around calling himself King Brock. He would not wear a crown. He would not do any of that stuff. It was just another accolade that he had. Everything changes. Edge would not, that at Edge's year, they gave a trophy. So he never wore a crown. But all that would go away. Because in 2006, the King of the Ring, I would say it was reinvented. It was reinvented in the sense that it was no longer done on pay-per-view. But in reality, it was literally just going back to 1995. And I don't say that, I mean 94, 95. Because 95, when you say King Mabel, it makes it seem like I'm making a statement about the talent that won the King of the Ring. When you go through all the people that have held that crown from 2006, they're all incredible. So I would say probably more the Owen, Mabel, 94, 95 era, because every single one of them has decided to be a king since 06. Every single one of the kings post-Brock has decided, you know, now I'm for real a king and this is going to be my bad guy gimmick. So in 2006, they announced that the King of the Ring tournament is back. It's again dual branded, Raw and SmackDown competing. But this is taking place over the course of about a month on various episodes of Raw and SmackDown. And the finals take place at Judgment Day 2006. So only the final King of the Ring tournament match takes place on pay-per-view. And that's not a King of the Ring pay-per-view. It's Judgment Day. Booker T defeats Matt Hardy. And then a couple weeks later, Kurt Angle on SmackDown. And then goes to Judgment Day 06 to defeat Bobby Lashley. So when you look at the tournaments that he defeated in the tournament itself, Matt Hardy, Kurt Angle, and Lashley, I mean, that is a hell of a lineup. That might be the best lineup of opponents. I mean, it rivals Bret Hart's lineup of Razor Ramon, Mr. Perfect, and Bam Bam Bigelow. Matt Hardy, Kurt Angle, and Lashley. That's a serious lineup. But Booker T ends up becoming the King of the Ring after defeating Lashley at Judgment Day 2006. And that's when the gimmick is changed and he becomes King Booker. King Booker probably up there with Owen Hart, maybe even better, as the best person to have ever done the King gimmick. I think King Booker may be, since like Macho King Randy Savage, the best to do the gimmick after winning the King of the Ring tournament. But for 4 years, we didn't have that tournament. And then after 06, it would go away again. We wouldn't have a tournament in 07. And in 2008, the King of the Ring tournament would be announced as a tri-branded show, meaning Raw, SmackDown, and ECW. And it would take place on a single night on an episode of Raw. An 8-man tournament amongst all three brands over the course of one night. It was not on pay-per-view. It was on an episode of Raw, but still, I remember this thing. I loved it. I loved it. And I would not mind this coming back on an episode of Raw or as a WWE Network special. I'm not attached to it having to be its own standalone pay-per-view. I am attached to it having to be in one night. This is the night, see 2008, and people forget. In 2008, William Regal was about as hot a heel as WWE had. William Regal was the Raw general manager, and he was incredible. He was great. He's an extremely underrated general manager of Monday Night Raw. But he comes back to start competing again, and when this King of the Ring tournament is announced, he puts himself in it. And in the first round, Hornswoggle is his opponent. Now, I know it's a cheap victory, but it is. I mean, if you're a crooked general manager of Monday Night Raw, Hornswoggle seems like an ideal opponent. How this chain of events, though, leads him to Fit Finlay. His name's Finlay. He loves to fight. As his opponent in round 2, which is Poetic Justice, because he's going to want revenge for humiliating his little buddy Hornswoggle. He beats Finlay and goes on to the King of the Ring tournament finals. And this is a perfect tournament final of a single night against CM Punk. CM Punk, who was that Daniel Bryan type guy. He was that groundswell support guy, that little engine that could. It was such a big deal when he won the Money in the Bank contest. But Chris Jericho was defeated by CM Punk earlier in the night, and Matt Hardy. So CM Punk had a hell of a night to go through. I mean, this is a guy who on paper the fans would have wanted to win, but wouldn't have expected to win. Watching him go through Matt Hardy, watching him go through Chris Jericho, and you're going, oh my God, this might be CM Punk's night. And he goes down to William Regal. And William Regal, after that, had a great run. Short, but great. He had to go away for a while, unfortunately. But when William Regal existed as the King of the Ring and the general manager of Raw, and just having this, I mean, he was like Thanos of Monday Night Raw. He was great. I loved that era, personally. I really loved it. And I thought that the character was great, and I happened to love that it happened all in one night. In 2010, another 2 years later, so now we're looking at 06, 08, and 10, the King of the Ring tournament is brought back. It's going to happen between Raw and SmackDown competitors. And it does happen in a single night. Now, a week before, they do qualifiers on Raw and on SmackDown. And then on one night on Raw, we get the tournament. Sheamus goes through Kofi Kingston, gets a bye in the second round. And in round 3, defeats John Morrison, who's like, I guess, an underdog. This tournament really mimics 1995 and Mabel's win, except Sheamus is awesome. Now, I'm not trying to disrespect Mabel. I just mean Sheamus is a great competitor. But all that said, this is the era that they're really trying to make Sheamus a thing. This is where, he won the WWE Championship so quick. Now he's the King of the Ring. They're just trying to see how they can turn Sheamus into a main eventer. When in reality, if they had just gone slow with Sheamus and let him beat up people, I think it all would have happened organically. The King of the Ring tournament disappears for 5 years after that. 5 years, the King of the Ring tournament goes away, and Sheamus holds that crown. He had it almost looked like a Wiccan crown that was made for him when he won that King of the Ring title. And in 2015, it's announced that the King of the Ring tournament is going to the WWE Network. Now, it's going to take place over 2 nights, and it's only going to be 8 men over 2 nights, not 16 men over 2 nights, the way it should have been. Kind of keep harping on that point, don't I? But on Raw the night before, the 8 men are announced, and then it's announced that on the Tuesday that follows Raw, we will be able to watch live on the WWE Network the semifinals and the finals of the King of the Ring tournament. So on Monday Night Raw, Wade Barrett beats Dolph Ziggler. And then the following night, he goes to the WWE Network and he defeats R-Truth and Neville, Neville being the underdog that everybody thought was going to win, to become King Barrett. And again, much like Booker T, much like William Regal, much like Sheamus, All these years later, this is now 9 years removed from Booker T. And it's the same gimmick. Wade Barrett, Bad News Barrett, he becomes King Barrett and tries to rule with an iron fist, but he doesn't actually have any authority. He just won this tournament. And then after 2015, it disappears again until 4 years later, we get the King of the Ring tournament held over about a month of Raws and SmackDowns. And over that month, Baron Corbin beats The Miz, then Cedric Alexander. Then, after Samoa Joe and Ricochet go to a draw, he has to win a triple threat against Samoa Joe and Ricochet. And then in the finals, beat Chad Gable, who, again, you're sitting there thinking he's going to be the underdog. This is going to be what puts him over the top, to spoil the whole thing. And he becomes, much like Barrett, much like Sheamus, much like Regal, much like Booker T, he becomes King Corbin. And then, in an interesting turn of events, to throw all the way back to like 86 to 91, 92, Corbin loses the crown by losing a match to King Nakamura, who today holds the crown. Of course, in 92, after Macho King was champion, was king, Jerry Lawler held that title, but who'd he ever beat? He didn't beat anybody for that crown. So that is your history of King of the Ring tournament winners in the WWE. Again, Haku, Duggan, not King of the Ring tournament winners. Lawler, not a King of the Ring tournament winner. And Macho King Randy Savage, while he was a King of the Ring tournament winner, did not become the king by winning the King of the Ring tournament, as ironic as that all is. So, the question is, what do you do with the King of the Ring tournament? Hot Dog and I have been arguing. See, Hot Dog thinks that what they should do with the King of the Ring tournament is make it a November pay-per-view. Bring back the King of the Ring as a pay-per-view, make it a November pay-per-view, and the winner gets a shot at the WWE champion or the Universal champion at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. So the King of the Ring tournament becomes the way that a person gets the main event of the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. Number one, I think it's basic. Number two, I think it's asinine. I think it's basic because not a lot of thought was put into it, okay? It's just like, yeah, and then the King of the Ring can get a shot at the title. Like, yeah, I mean, the King of the Ring should get a shot at the title anyway. It shouldn't need to be a stipulation. If you're the king, you should be a main eventer. So that shouldn't matter. It's basic. I mean, it's basic because you haven't thought about the fact that there already is a standing traditional pay-per-view in November. It's called the Survivor Series. I wouldn't advocate for canceling that. But the reason really why I don't think that that works at all is because it's the exact same prize that you win in the Royal Rumble, except in the Royal Rumble, you win the WrestleMania match. And the WrestleMania match is worth way more than the Royal Rumble match. So you'd win the King of the Ring tournament to go to the Royal Rumble, to not be in the Royal Rumble because you're in the title match, and to watch somebody else get the same prize that you just won and probably lost, and except better, because they get to go to WrestleMania and you only got to go to the Royal Rumble. It really doesn't make any sense. But even the idea that you get a guaranteed championship match if you're the king, I think only lends to people like Mabel winning the King of the Ring tournament. I think that if we sit here saying, well, you have a guaranteed main event, then that's going to become the focus of the King of the Ring tournament. I think that the King of the Ring as a title should mean something. I think that the person who wins the King of the Ring should have had 3 great matches in one night. That should be what the King of the Ring means. Like they say that the Intercontinental Championship is the working man's title, or at least has been at different eras in the WWE. I think that that's what the King of the Ring should be. That this is a person who has the ability to have 3 great matches all in a single night. And that is Bret Hart and Owen Hart and Steve Austin and Triple H and Kurt Angle and Edge and Brock Lesnar, Booker T, Regal, Sheamus, Barrett, Corbin. You know, that's what it should be about. Now, a lot of those that I just read at the end, they won it through heel tactics, and that's kind of a different thing. But they all have the capability of being that person. I think that's how it should raise a person's stock. Simply through the actions. Like, they should be looked at as very special matches. And so when they're really good, they really mean something. Because if let's say you go like, okay, well, Drew McIntyre is going to win the King of the Ring. That way he can go to Royal Rumble and get the shot at Roman Reigns. Yeah, but Drew McIntyre would get the shot at Roman Reigns anyway. You know? So I don't think it needs to have a guaranteed championship match.
Thanks for listening. Follow at Notsam on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Rate, review, and subscribe. This has been Notsam Wrestling.